Hi, I'm Feroz Khan, and welcome to Drag and Drop Low Code Unplugged, the podcast where we explore the game changing impact of low code in software development. Join me in insightful conversations with IT leaders and passionate low code enthusiasts who are at the forefront of this digital evolution. Together, we'll explore how early adoption of low code is giving businesses a competitive edge on a global scale. We'll discuss its impact on software development, dissect its role in transforming businesses, and uncover the ways in which it's reshaping career trajectories. So whether you're a seasoned IT professional or a curious enthusiast, be sure to tune in as we share success stories and unravel the mysteries of low code. Subscribe now and stay tuned for a front row seat to the revolution that's shaping the future of technology. So let's go. Hi, Sezen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on as a guest.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I've seen it a lot on LinkedIn coming by, so it's really cool to be on the podcast.
Amazing, amazing. I've been following you for a while, so I thought, I see you always put up some interesting videos on LinkedIn, so I thought it'd be good to kind of have a longer format discussion with you, and find out a bit more. So it'd be good to start with a little bit of an introduction to who you are, where you're from.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Sezen de Bruijn and I'm a solution architect in the Netherlands. I'm based in the Utrecht office of OutSystems. And that basically means that I get to go along with my sales colleagues basically to customers who are still considering whether low code is a good solution for them, and also help out my more experienced customers to see if OutSystems is specifically a good solution for the problems that they are trying to solve that they have less experience with in the low code domain. So it's really fun. I get to really see inside of the organizations of
Yeah,
and what they do basically with low code. So it's a fun experience.
yeah. And you started with OutSystems in 2018. Prior to that, when did you first hear about low code and what was your initial impressions of low code?
Honestly, I did not hear about low code much earlier than when I joined OutSystems. Like,
Okay.
obviously, I knew what it was by the time I was
Yeah.
interviewing, but a colleague of mine I was working at HP in testing software before that. And a colleague of mine actually went to work for OutSystems. And, we had some conversations. I was
Yeah.
very interested. Honestly, my first interpretation was that maybe it was a service bus of some kind, if I'm
Yeah.
honest about
Yeah.
it. But then when I started to learn more details, I was like, oh, this is really cool because I had been programming in university a bit, but I
Mm.
always got stuck a little bit on the syntax. Like
Yeah.
I'm not very detail oriented, so I
Yeah.
could not get as far as I wanted to. And I was like, oh, maybe I can actually build an application without having to search for dot commas and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was really excited to learn a little bit more about the technology, and that's how I wound up eventually interviewing for OutSystems.
And when you started kind of when you started and you playing around with the platform, how how quick were you able to kind of pick things up and kind of understand everything?
Oh, that was actually really fun. So I was still working very hard as well on my previous job, and I had
Mm.
this trip that I was driving to Luxembourg for some reason. So I
Mm.
just put the training and tutorials of OutSystems on like voice only, so I could not see it
Yeah.
because I was driving.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was just listening to what I was supposed to be doing for the entire trip to and from. So I got through like 8 hours of course material.
Wow.
And then when I got home, I just opened up the environment and was like, well, let's see if that translates somehow to
Yeah.
visual
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
And I immediately was able to start building and figure stuff out, which was really like the level of entry was extremely low. And
Mm.
I know that I did this cool demo for my interview. Like now I would build much better applications.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I managed to like build multiple applications with multiple data sources that were being reused across like different applications and that were communicating with each other. And I was feeling so proud of
Yeah.
myself that I managed all of that. So yeah, I felt it was a very easy jump in. And I don't even
Yeah.
know if how much of that training really helped, because it was only auditory, right? So
Audio,
I
yeah, yeah,
had
yeah,
not
yeah,
seen how to interact with the product at all. It was
yeah.
just it being
That's good.
described to me,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah. Wow. That's an interesting way of learning. Definitely. I haven't heard that one before. And you mentioned your role where, you're speaking to, you go with the sales guys, speaking to new potential customers, and see how low code fits. What's some common issues you hear when you're speaking to the customers that they're facing and that's the reason why they're looking at low code as an option?
Well, by far, of course, the most common reason is that they have too much work to get done and too little resources and
Mm,
time to get it done in. I think that's sort of the universal problem, not
yeah,
just in development, but like in life.
yeah,
There's
yes,
just too much to do, too little time to do it
yeah,
in. But with regards to most of my customers, the areas where that's most sort of visual is when they are doing legacy replacement projects, because there's just so much to be replacing, and it's a relatively low value added activity, except for, of course, that they need to do it to be able to get to other goals. So they
sure.
would like to be able to do that in a very quick and efficient way. And another area where you see that a lot is in customer facing applications. So you see the business getting frustrated that the IT is not able to support the new sort of needs that they want to
Mm,
cover with their customers. And then you see that adding just a little bit of low code in there to accelerate things can really sort of unlock new innovative business proposals and unlock new sort of value adding activities for the organization.
yeah, yeah. And I think, Netherlands is probably, one of the biggest OutSystems markets. I'd say even low code because there's another player that
Yeah,
is
we have
Dutch
friends.
founded, right?
Yeah.
And why do you think that, Netherlands has really adopted low code and, customers that have really kind of taken to low code versus other, big countries like UK and US, I think, not as fast as Netherlands.
Ah, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of my Dutch customers are very proactive in adopting new technologies. So that might
Mm,
be it, a sort of an entrepreneurial spirit
mm,
towards technology and a certain willingness to take educated risks. So
yeah,
something might not be completely proven yet and they're already on the train, which means that because right now, of course, low code is very well established in the
yeah.
world, but I think that the Netherlands adopted it earlier than most because of
Mm,
this sort of entrepreneurial spirit, which means that we also now have a much larger pool of resources basically to
mm,
draw from, right? So we have a lot of like really good, well experienced 8 year old experienced
mm,
developers, right?
yeah,
And you need to have some time in the market to get to that point. And
yeah.
then, of course, also the people who are less entrepreneurial can get on board because there's so much
Mm.
already knowledge within a country on how to adopt this technology and utilize it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, when you look at Netherlands in Europe, I think outside of Portugal, there's a lot of OutSystems developers and talent that have moved there quite a while ago with really good experience. So it's not really full of junior resources, so it's quite established.
Yes, we did sort of secretly steal a lot of Portuguese colleagues who
Yeah,
are
yeah, I saw
very
that. Yeah.
kind in leaving their beautiful countries where it's not
Yeah.
storming outside where
Yeah.
I'm assuming to come and live in our dreary little country and help us solve big IT problems. And I do think that that is also a really good demonstration of how interconnected the
Mm,
global world of
yeah.
IT is. But yes, you're right. We have a
Yeah.
lot of Portuguese developers in the Netherlands. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And when you're speaking to these customers, what kind of misconceptions sometimes do they think about low code that you have to kind of explain to them that, it can offer a lot more than what there's a thing where it can't do as much as traditional can offer you. What's some things you tend to hear quite regularly?
The perception that it's too good to be true is, of course, like very well like established. Almost every conversation that I have where people with a good IT background hear about low code for the first time, they just immediately get suspicious because the value proposition is, of course, we will help you do everything in very little time with little effort. And look, it has colorful little building blocks. So it looks very like approachable and almost childish in a way,
Yeah.
the technology. So of course people get quite hesitant on that. And then especially because OutSystems mostly focuses on big IT projects, so ERP systems, CRMs, your high performance customer facing type of technologies. What you see is that people have very high enterprise standards around those, and they typically assume we cannot meet them. So very often heard concerns is like, can you deal with the performance load that large batch processing requires, or the amount of, if all of my customers are switching from healthcare insurances, like in the same month, will the system still be able to load it, or will we have outages, or is it secure enough, because we're being governed by the Dutch banking compliance laws, and we have a lot of regulations, and I'm sure that it cannot actually accommodate that, or so a lot of those types of things. But in reality we can address all of those things, and I do see a lot of surprise sometimes when I'm like, yes, the Dutch banking regulations, we've got about 10 customers who are currently in compliance with that, working in all of the different deployment options. Do you want to discuss how they did that and what we can do for you? And they're like very surprised sometimes, which is kind of fun.
It
It's
must
nice
be
to
nice
bring
for
good
you.
news.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it must be nice for you in that kind of meeting where obviously they're talking, and as they're kind of mentioning these concerns, you're waiting for them to finish because you're ready to have the solution that we can do it. We can do what you're looking for, and it's not just for small little things that you need to build.
Yes, definitely. And what is really gratifying is that when I started my job 5 years ago, often we had to prove ourselves in
Yeah.
relatively smaller areas first before we
Mm.
got there. But now we have such a big base of reference customers that for many customers, it's okay for me to actually go, okay, let me help you speak with someone who has done this
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Let's build the efforts, let's share the resources, and that they are actually willing to jump in with the big digital
Yeah.
transformation project
Mm.
immediately, rather than having us build small pieces upfront first. And that's just very gratifying that we
Yeah.
have gotten to that stage of established technology as OutSystems, but also as low code in general within the Netherlands. That's a very
Yeah.
nice experience.
Yeah. And like you said, I think it helps that, even like on the OutSystems website, there's so many customer stories, that you can look back on and see that, big companies are really adopting low code and OutSystems and doing big projects with it, not just small things. So that can also give them some confidence, that they can do what they need to do. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
since you've been working with the platform, there's been various kind of releases and upgrades in the last, since you've kind of started working with it. In that time that you've been working with it, what are some kind of significant upgrades that have been kind of released that has kind of really you've been excited about to go speak to new customers and existing customers about?
Oh, there's been so many, because that's the thing, is we release quite frequently
Yeah.
new capabilities, also because we are in a market where a lot of parties do that as well. So we have to sort of all keep up and
Yeah.
keep showing
Yeah.
our
Of
value
course.
every time. But some of the things that I've been really excited about working with is, when I just started, it was all mobile. It was so cool to be able to build
Yeah.
local mobile applications. Now everybody is like, yes, mobile, of course. But
Yeah. Yeah.
back
Yeah.
then it was like really cool to be
Very
talking
new.
about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yes. And I also remember the introduction of like reactive web, so a new UI framework, and the UI became so much quicker and smoother and nicer. And the thing is, when we were implementing that, that wasn't even that noticeable to me. But then now I sometimes look at old applications that were like predating this UI framework and not upgraded to this UI framework. And wow, it's so much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's insane. And even now we're already working towards like our new UI frameworks and like new UI technology. So it's moving forward. But just the difference that you see time over time in terms of UI was amazing. But also additionally, just like the boring things that we release. For instance, one of the things that I really love is we have this CRUD action, so to write something into the database. In this case, we have the option to create a lot of records or update a lot of records as a list. So rather than having to do them one by one and making the connection to the database every time, we now have an action to do that in one go. And it's such a simple thing, but it just increases the performance of applications so much. So yeah, it's nice to see it sort of evolve in that way.
Yeah, yeah. And recently there's all talk about, every conversation mentions AI in there. And obviously OutSystems have released features, AI agent builder and things like that. What are the kind of, how are the kind of customers dealing with that, and kind of what kind of questions are they asking regarding AI to OutSystems?
Well, it's the interesting thing is that on one hand, of course, everybody's very excited about using this new technology.
Mm,
But on the other hand, there's also a lot of concerns on how to apply it in an appropriate fashion. Especially a lot of my customers are in insurance and banking, so
mm,
they are very aware that they cannot just share like customers' information without like the proper guidelines in place. And they
mm.
also cannot just give advice based on an AI generated element
Yeah,
without like the intervention of one of their
yeah,
employees. So what's been very interesting discussions lately is AI, yes, but how? So how do we do this in a well-contained, governed manner that we create models that are very easy to understand and showcase that they're working well, that we're not sharing any data that we cannot be sharing outside of the organization, for instance, and that we are putting a human in place basically to check if
yeah,
what we are communicating to the customers is accurate. And you see really that tools like the AI agent builder, it's a
mm,
capability that we've recently released in ODC, really help because they, one, give examples of how to implement this in a good governed way, and you can take these examples and adapt them. But also it gives you real good ways for you to build your own private knowledge base, basically on the AI provider of your choice. It gives you good safe connections towards that AI provider. So it already is giving you a lot of these sort of safety features that you need to be able to use
mm,
it out of the box, and gives
mm,
you a little bit more security, I guess, that
yeah,
you
yeah.
are doing it in the right way and that you don't need to invent everything yourself.
Yeah, I think, I think everyone's asking it, but they're not really understanding how it's gonna work out. So it's good that, you guys are always thinking about it and, trying to stay ahead at the same time as well. And, talking about the platform itself, and because you're dealing with customers all the time, and even yourself, what are some kind of frustrations or things that maybe the platform doesn't offer, that either, is a frustration for yourself or something you hear quite a bit from customers, that, is something that needs to be looked at, or is being looked at, or has been looked at already and resolved?
Well, honestly, the biggest source for frustrations that I had to deal with last year was ODC, which is our
Okay.
new
Yeah.
product offering. Not because it's not a good product now, but because when we first launched it, of course, it was less mature than
Mm,
our current offering. And in some ways, it will never be exactly the same product, right? Because you have a
mm,
different implementation approach. So you see that we had a lot of resistance around adopting this product at first. And also, honestly, I myself had some frustrations with the product in the beginning. And to be honest, it was a two-way thing. So on
mm,
one hand, the product was not completely mature yet, and so there were
yeah.
some features that I was still waiting on. But on the other hand, it was also me approaching this new technology as if it's my old technology and
Yeah.
only judging it based on doing everything in the way that
Yeah.
I expected it to work
Comparing
with
it.
the
Yeah.
O11.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what I learned is to really get sort of to move forward with my relationship with ODC, I had to sort of abandon some preconceived notions and to learn to understand ODC on its own terms. And it turns out that it was already a much better product than I thought when
Mm,
I sort of moved past my own preconceptions. But still, there were some things to be improved. And what you see is because on ODC, we've built it so that we can easily release features quite
mm,
quickly. What you see is that over the past year, it really has caught up very well with where we are at with O11 now, which is basically a miracle because we have 21 years or something invested in O11, and ODC managed to get there like in, I don't know, a couple of
really
years.
fast.
That's and of course we already knew a lot going in because we have the existing product and offering and understand the market very well. But I'm just really impressed with how far we've gotten. And now for the first time, we are releasing features on ODC that we don't have yet on O11 and that are really market improvements. So we have, for instance, event-driven architectures now on ODC, which is a really nice way to be building applications in a decoupled fashion. And we don't have that on O11, and that's just really exciting to see. So I think that was the main source of frustration, and I'm sure that there will still be frustrations around this product going forward as well, because no product is perfect.
Yes,
but
exactly.
It's just really nice to see sort of the improvement curve that we've had on the technology.
Yeah, and like you said, obviously those things, you know, you had to look at it as a whole different platform and not compare it to which maybe customers are also doing, comparing everything to OS 11 and not seeing it as its own new platform.
Yeah, and I think actually that also comes from the underlying expectation that they're gonna have to migrate everything from OS 11 to ODC, which by the way, it's not, they don't have to concern themselves with that too much right now, because in 2019, 2029, sorry, English numbers very difficult. In 2029, at least till then, we guarantee that we will be delivering ODC, and it might be longer, I don't know. But beyond that, also we are building automated migration tools basically to help with the migration. So honestly, I think people are making this a much bigger concern in their head
than what it is.
It will wind up being in the end. I think it will be fine. But just we are having some time to, you know, to all get that experience basically. So people are thinking, how do I do exactly the same things in O11 in ODC? Because they imagine that is how it needs to be. Which luckily with low code, you don't need to migrate one-on-one. You can do it in smarter ways. So it's not going to be as much of a problem as a lot of people think it is.
I often see, like you said, I see it a lot on LinkedIn about, you know, all these discussions around OS 11 to ODC. And, you know, I think it's good that it's being dealt with, and it's not really as big as what, you know, it's made out to be. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, honestly, that's one of the strengths of low code, right? Because we're not building the actual coding language itself. We're building a model on top of that. And that gives us a lot of room to basically reinterpret and reorganize things in an automated fashion and create the new stack on ODC without it all being manual labor of a developer to fix things, right? So that is one of the many ways that low code is actually quite wonderful, I think.
Yeah. And, you know, in your time, you know, working with OutSystems, can you tell us about one or two projects that you've been involved in that, you know, you thought, you know, were quite kind of significant, really, you know, good milestones were met, and really kind of, you know, it's something you're proud that you were involved in, and, you know, really interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm mostly working in insurances and a little bit in banking, but mostly insurances is my domain. And what's really interesting to me is that we do everything from the most front end to the most back end and everything in between. So some of the cool things that I've seen happening is, for instance, we have in the Netherlands this window where everybody needs to switch healthcare insurances. And last year, like there were 3 or 4 of the healthcare providers that were running these campaigns, were running it on OutSystems. So you had like either the front end where people were all logging in en masse and changing their healthcare or figuring out which products to choose, or you had like on the back end registering the switches happening. And that was really cool because I think like from about 1/6 of the Dutch people switch healthcare always in this 1 month window. And I think about half of those have gone through OutSystems at some point.
Yeah.
This makes me sort of excited.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. And yeah, it must be obviously they don't know that, right? So
No.
so for you being an employee, you know that, these are our customers and there's all these people kind of going through the platform, which is really good.
Yeah, especially because we had zero incidents or issues with any of them.
Mm.
So that means that we basically kept our part of the bargain, and it's
Yeah.
always very nice. It's an
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. And in the time you've been, working with OutSystems, low code, you've obviously got, contacts, friends, whoever who may be involved in traditional development, or, you've had conversations, or even if you haven't, what's your kind of message to people who, and you might have this conversation with customers when you're speaking to them, what's your message to those who kind of still don't believe in low code and think, it's not it can't be treated, like traditional. What would you say to, or what kind of conversations would you have had with people? What would be your message to them?
Well, one of the interesting conversations that I often have with high code developers is that they say, well, if I become a low code developer, my value as a developer will go down.
Mm,
Because what I do is I write code, I write syntax, that's what's my added value to the company. And if I do it in a low code platform where it's all easy drag and drop and visual, then everybody could do it, and then I don't have added value and I will not get as high a salary or be as
mm,
employable or things like that.
mm,
And I find that a very interesting way of looking at it, because in my opinion, a developer's added value is not that they write syntax, right? It's that
mm,
they build working applications for people. And that is a skill that you need as hard as, if not more so, when you're building a low code application. Because building a low code application basically means being able to understand the functionality that needs to be built, being able to break it down into logical steps, and being able to then communicate that to the platform in an effective way. And of course, I understand concerns that maybe the local platform could not cover the entire range of
mm,
things. That has not been my experience, but I understand as an outsider, you might be worried about it. But I think the idea that you lose value as a developer if you are not writing it in syntax is one of the strangest. I don't know. I think it's a sad way of looking at what the added value of a developer is, I guess,
mm,
because that really makes them sort of people who are basically an instrument of the will of their company, where I think what they are doing is quite hard. Like
yeah.
it requires intelligently understanding what needs to be done and
Mm,
implementing that in a logical fashion. And I think drilling that all down to writing code is just sort of underselling the job a little bit.
yeah. And we find, it's always the people who have come from traditional to low code, they it's very rare they will go back. I think it's more so the hardest part is getting them to try it. That's if you can just get them to try it and get an opportunity working with it. I think we've never had anyone go back, but that the biggest challenge is convincing them to have a go.
Yeah, exactly. And if you do convince them to have a go and ask them to break it, it's my experience that people typically will find that they cannot break it,
Yeah.
and then will have a blast figuring out what kind of projects they can
Yeah.
do much faster and with less boring tasks, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the things that we automate are the things that are not fun to do as a developer. So
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. And I've seen your on LinkedIn, you're involved in a few initiatives that OutSystems are running. But I thought it'd be good for you to speak about them and tell us what you're involved in, what you're driving forward, and what people can kind of get involved in.
yes, so what I'm doing right now is, as I said, we have this new product called ODC, and are all trying to get to know this new product and understand how to work with it. And it's been my experience that the best way to do that is to get people to, well, try it out, as we just said,
Yeah, yeah.
because that really tackles a lot of the things that you're scared of disappear once you have had play around with the technology. So what I've been doing is I've been organizing these coding challenges where I basically challenge people to do all of the things that are difficult in ODC or different in ODC from O11, and really just sort of try to push them outside of their comfort zone to
Mm.
compete for very poor prices, like terrible quality goodies. do not expect any good prizes whatsoever. But it becomes valuable because of the effort you put into it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Bragging rights as well, definitely.
Bragging rights,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
there is a leaderboard. I take a picture of the leaderboard, I put it on LinkedIn, or I tag people, and I
Nice.
basically give them some credit for the
Yeah.
cool stuff that they have done. And
Yeah.
but honestly, that's the best way to learn and to get to know a new technology. It's in the presence of other people, in a playful manner, with a bit of
Mm.
competition there, and that you get
Yeah.
to take home a shitty goodie for
Yeah.
as a reward.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly, exactly. And
Yeah.
where are you running these open days?
I'm running them pretty much everywhere. That's not
Okay.
the correct way of saying it. But I mainly do it in the Netherlands because that's where
Mm.
I'm based, so it's
Yep.
the easiest for me to do. But I arrange tours to different countries. So I'm doing one in the Nordics, so
Yep.
Finland, Sweden, Denmark,
Mm.
and I'm running some of them in Belgium just so that people there can have a try. And I have colleagues who are very kindly doing it for me in different countries as well. So
Yeah.
we already had one in Portugal. We will be
Yeah.
having one in the UK. So it's a really exciting time for me to see other people also take
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
on. It's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's the feedback from the developers itself? That obviously, there's a certification for ODC as well. And, they've obviously been working with, we spoke about the clients,
Mhm.
feedback. What kind of feedback are you getting from developers? Are they, from the people I speak to, there seems to be excitement, but also a bit of a question mark because they might be working on customer projects who are making them a bit like, oh, okay, question mark. But what's the feedback you usually hear?
So in general, people are indeed very excited on the day. I
Mm.
think it's also sort of part of the excitement of being in the
Yeah.
gamifications,
Yeah.
fairs, etc. But people do have, of course, questions on both architecture, because the architecture is quite different. It's very loosely coupled, and so you need to, as a developer, sort of acquire a different way of working and different mindset around it.
Mm.
But also about existing projects and how they would be migrating onto ODC. Um, and sometimes about the new features that we have in ODC, like how to apply them in a good way. So, for
Mm.
instance, the event-driven architecture that I mentioned
Yeah.
before, it really requires a new set of skills and knowledge to be able to do that without creating a mess. But on the
Mm.
other end, there's a lot of exciting opportunities there as well. So yes, people are starting to really looking forward to adopting it, which is nice, and that's
Mm.
really a change that I've seen happening over the last year. And so the biggest question I think that most people have right now is, when can we switch over?
Yeah,
So
sure.
when is this product at the place that I can
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
building this project or that project? And so that's very nice. It's a
Yeah.
different conversation that we're having
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. And just a final question, for yourself personally or professionally, what kind of goals and targets have you got for yourself for the future that you're looking forward to? I saw some things on your LinkedIn about few personal things that you wanted to do, like publish a book and things like that.
Wow, you did your research. Yeah. No, but to be fair,
Yeah.
I think for me professionally, I really like my current job.
Yeah.
So I do imagine myself doing it at least for a couple of
Mm.
more years in some form, shape, or another. And I really enjoy
Mm.
also OutSystems as a technology. So
Yeah.
I would love to stay involved with it.
Mm.
But I really have a hard time looking like big forward in terms of
Too
career.
far ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
But on a personal level, I indeed have a lot of like goals that I want to pursue, because I do think that your personal life can really enrich
Yes.
sort of your experience. So
Yeah.
writing a book is definitely up there. I'm currently very much into running, so I'm trying to figure out if I can learn how to run half a marathon. So that's something that
Nice.
I'm training
Cool.
for. It's
Yeah.
really
Nice.
cool, and it's a very
Yeah.
different. I'm not very physical, so for me it's a
Okay.
very different skill set.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
try out.
That's cool. Well, yeah, I would definitely look forward to if you do a marathon, that's great. That's really interesting. And definitely if you decide to do a book, that would be good as well. But no, I appreciate you taking the time. It was really good to hear your opinion and your insights and everything. And I look forward to, seeing some posts about the open days and the amazing prizes that you'll be giving out. And I'm sure we'll meet in the future, maybe at next step in October.
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing you there.
Amazing. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode, which is brought to you by ITRAC. We are a leading staffing firm that solely specializes in supplying both contract and permanent low-code professionals to organizations globally. Navigating the niche landscape of the low-code market requires the best talent, and we recognize its critical importance for our clients. Whether you're a company looking to strengthen your team, an individual seeking the next career move, or someone entirely new to the world of low-code, we're here for you. Our extensive experience and in-depth market knowledge enables us to quickly pinpoint the ideal candidates while offering expert advice and support at every stage of your low-code journey. Reach out to us through our website or connect with me directly on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to assist you. Thank you once again for joining us today. We'll be back next week with another insightful episode. Until then, take care.